One more time, we'd like to give our good friend Eric Nelson a thanks for coming on to the show. If you missed the beginning of the show, you can always hop onto the website, testosteronesports.com, and see the first two segments there. But for now, it's on to the fantasy football portion of the equation. So I welcome my esteemed colleague and my good friend Yeasty.
What's
up, man? How's it going?
We had to do the little the go-go gadget thing because I've got arms like a T-Rex over here. So good to be back on the show again. You know, my work schedule is definitely interfering a little bit with us this year, but glad to be back on. So let's drop some knowledge.
Yeah, that's what we do here. If you're just joining us now, if this is the first time you've ever seen the show or this is the first clips you've ever seen of what we do here at Testosterone Sports, we break it all down. We tell you who you need to play on a weekly basis to help you dominate in your fantasy football league. And we've got this kick-ass website that goes along with it, testosteronesports.com. You can get a little cramp typing all that stuff in, but Yeasty, tell the people at home why they should go to the site. There's a little of something for everybody.
Got a little bit of everything. We've got the thing that's called The Vein, where Jesse drops a lot of knowledge on basically your news breakers, injuries, and things like that. We've got articles by everybody here at TFS. We've got our ranking systems, matchups. We've got a bench start segment by a guy named Hollywood. How he came up with the nickname Hollywood, I don't know. But Hollywood does the bench start segment.
I think he likes breast implants.
Really?
Yeah, I don't
know. He's got man boobs, so there you go. And we've got a Grizzle report, which gets you up to date on all the injury information. So everything that you would want to see, writers' pages where we just kind of go off on things. So check it out, testosteronesports.com.
Yeah, and you see the last thing that he mentioned there was the Grizzle report. I want you all, when you check out the site this week, to make sure you click on the Grizzle report. There is a video on there.
Is that your idea to put those things up?
Yeah.
Seriously, I looked at some of them. I was like, oh, God.
Yeah, don't make your stomach turn. You'll understand the meaning of the word grizzle when you see the Grizzle report. All the grisliest news for fantasy football owners up there as well. But what we do here on the show, the heart and soul of the show, is breaking down all of the matchups, the NFL's week 5 slate of games here. So we'll dive right in. One of the marquee games of the week, Yeasty, has to be this NFC East clash between the Washington Redskins and the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are undoubtedly the best 2-2 team in the league.
Yeah, they are. They've done a lot of good things with what we thought was a depleted team to start the season. We knew about McNabb and Westbrook. Obviously, the Westbrook injury hurt some people last week, but Deshaun Jackson has really surprised. Everybody overall has performed really well for the Eagles, and they've got to be the best 2-2 team out there.
Yeah, you mentioned Deshaun Jackson. On the season, fantasy owners have really been loving him. Other than that gaffe he had a couple weeks back where he fumbled the ball on the 1-yard line against the Cowboys when he could have easily walked into the end zone. This guy's been spectacular. I mean, he's a little bit on the undersized side of the equation, but still 22 catches on the season for 327 yards and a touchdown. Deshaun Jackson could be a good play here at home. But Yeasty, when you talk about Philly, as they roll, so is it is always Donovan McNabb and Brian Westbrook. Westbrook was out of action last week. He's returned to practice. If he does suit up, do fantasy owners roll him out, or is there some decision between he and Carell Buckhalter there?
I think if Westbrook goes, you've got to put him in the lineup, and just roll with it and take that risk. I mean, he is your top back if you've got him in your lineup. So if he's healthy and they say he's going to start, roll with him. Washington hasn't been allowing a lot of points to running backs against Dallas last week. That's more Dallas's fault than anything because Marion Barber only touched the ball, I think, 9 times last week.
Right, 9 carries.
So, it's hopefully he'll do well, but Philly mixes it up so well between the pass and the run with Westbrook that, especially in a PPR league, you've got to roll with him if he's available.
The Washington Redskins with a huge win last week, going into Dallas and knocking off the team everybody's just essentially placing in the Super Bowl right now, the Dallas Cowboys. The Skins are doing it with a very solid recipe, mixing the pass in with the run. Clinton Portis was effective but not dominant in that performance. The guy that's really been dominant for this squad so far has been Santana Moss, number 2 in the league in receiving yardage. Yeasty, Philadelphia is so stout against the run. Don't you think that Moss is going to be the guy who has to make some plays here?
They're going to have to, but Philadelphia is also stout against the pass as well with Lito Shepherd and Asante Samuel and those guys. But it's going to come through the air, and we'll see how Jason Campbell has truly evolved against a lot tougher defense than he faced last week against Dallas. So this will be by far his biggest test of the year. I was down on him a little bit last week on the website, said don't read into too much against what he did over the last couple of weeks against the Cardinals and against the Saints.
Right.
Last time he faced a solid defense was against the Giants in Week 1, and he looked horrible. So this is kind of the true litmus test of how he's going to look this year.
Yeah, and he has been sharp so far. Campbell, 6 TDs, no interceptions on the season. So not a guy you really want to be relying on a fantasy basis, but definitely a guy who's making some progress. When we talked to Chris Cooley, you and I, in the offseason, Chris was very impressed by how Jason Campbell was rehabbing from injury, and he's really showing that Coach Jim Zorn has made the right move, standing behind this guy and moving forward with him. Now the San Diego Chargers will travel to Miami all the way across the country to face the Dolphins, who are coming off of a bye. The Chargers at the beginning of the year, Yeasty, they were a little disheveled. They lost their first 2 games, but they're still number 1 in scoring offense. They should be able to get it rolling here against the Dolphins.
Yeah, this should be a typical game for the Chargers. Evidently, they only like to play from about the 4-minute mark in the third quarter on.
Right.
Because except for against Denver, they roll late in the ball game. So especially LaDainian Tomlinson. So I would look for all the Chargers to play pretty well against Miami, who doesn't have a great defense. Put LaDainian in. He hasn't looked impressive. He's broken off some big runs and got some cheap touchdowns, but you know what? Fantasy numbers are fantasy numbers, and you take them any way you can get them at this point, especially from him.
Yeah, now Antonio Gates is missing practice again this week. He's got a couple different nagging injuries. He should be in the lineup, and as always, when you've got Gates, if he's on your squad and he's going to play, you got to start Antonio Gates there. And the real guy who is a must-play here for the Chargers is Chris Chambers. Talk a little bit about Chambers and how fantastic he's been so far this year.
He's been really good, except he's not catching a lot of balls, but when he does catch them, they're long passes, and they're usually for touchdowns. So Chris Chambers has performed very well. He's by far Phillip Rivers' favorite target so far in the year when they're trying to get the ball deep. Gates is the underneath guy. So I think you would start everybody. You start Rivers, Gates, Chambers, and LT. If you need Vincent Jackson to get through bye weeks, he's up against a pretty soft secondary as well, so you could roll with Vincent Jackson if you need to as well.
The last time we looked at the Miami Dolphins, they were straight up kicking Bill Belichick in the nutsack. Ronnie Brown going off for, I believe it was 4 rushing touchdowns and a passing touchdown. Ronnie Brown owners, most of you had to be so depressed. I'm sure you had him sitting right there on your bench, probably outscoring your entire starting lineup. Ronnie Brown coming back on the field this week. He's at home. He's against the San Diego Chargers. Yeasty, dissect it here. Give the people at home your take on what you expect from Ronnie Brown and the Dolphins D in this game.
The Dolphins D or the Dolphins O?
Dolphins O, sorry.
Right, the Dolphins D is going to get lit up, I think. The Dolphins O is going to look, I think they're going to look pretty pedestrian, but they are at home. Ronnie Brown, it's probably going to be one of those box score chasing things where you chase him off of the big week, and he's probably going to lay an egg against you. I don't see him doing a whole heck of a lot, but he is proving to be the main running back in the ground game right now. Ricky Williams, there was an article about him saying that he was tempted to smoke pot on the bye week, so he had to work with that. So there's your typical Ricky Williams right there. Keep Ronnie Brown in the lineup. The guy that you want to go out and get, especially if you're like a Kellen Winslow owner and you've got a tight end on bye week, is Anthony Fasano. If somebody picked him up after week 1, he laid an egg week 2, maybe he's out there on the waiver wire. Tight ends just light up the San Diego Chargers. So if Anthony Fasano is out there, pick him up, plug him in. He'll be a good bye week fill-in if you're somebody like a Kellen Winslow owner. So
what we're telling you, Ronnie Brown owners, is if you had him benched a couple weeks ago, I'm sorry, man, it ain't gonna happen again.
If you weren't the douchebag that had him started at New England, there was a guy in the league that I run for 15 years, had Ronnie Brown in there against New England, and I was like, God, what an idiot! Why is he doing that?
Yeah, it happened.
Well, he's basically an idiot, but he got lucky and scored about 45 points. So roll with him again if you want. I'm not saying he's going to have a great game, though, but he is the number 1 option in the running game.
A division matchup here to talk about: the Indianapolis Colts going down to Houston to square off with the 0-4 Texans. Now, the Texans are a team that were supposed to be taking a step forward on the offensive side of the ball this season, but so far, Yeasty, it hasn't been all it's been cracked up to be for the Texans. Andre Johnson yet to get in the end zone.
Yeah, Andre Johnson, the guy that I was pimping out as the top receiver that was going to break out this year, had him in my top 5 in the preseason rankings. He's been an absolute no-show. So maybe there's some lingering effects from the knee injury that are showing up. Matt Schaub looked decent last week. Hit Kevin Walter a couple of times, which kind of depressed me. But, threw for 300 yards and a couple of touchdowns. And, Matt Schaub, if you can get him, I would say roll with him right now because they've got a pretty decent schedule coming up. And Steve Slayton has done it against Tennessee, and he's done it at Jacksonville. And so he's looked good against two pretty solid defenses. Steve Slayton's pretty much a must-start at this point.
Yeah, you got to roll him out against Indy. Now, on the flip side for Indy, traditionally when you see the Texans come into town or the Colts traveling to face the Texans, as it were in this situation, you want to play all of your key Colts. They've had a bye week here where they're coming up rested. They should be healthy. They should be getting that swagger going a little bit. They're definitely in a must-win situation now because a couple of these other teams from their division, the Jags have now stacked 2 wins in a row, and the Titans are 4-0. So you never know what's going to happen. But I'd essentially recommend everyone rolling out their Colts. The final matchup of this segment, Yeasty Seattle traveling to the Giants. The Seahawks, a team that have really looked disheveled so far. It sounds like they might be getting a couple of their wide receivers back in this matchup, but the Giants look like they're for real still, and that's a tough spot for the Hawks.
Anytime that a team like Seattle is playing on the road against a physical defense, they're not going to perform very well, I don't think. Bobby Ingram's coming back. He's still upset about his contract situation.
Yep.
But he will be probably the best receiving option that they've got. Deion Branch is still questionable at this point. I don't think he's going to be back. But, Matt Hasselbeck's got to throw the ball to somebody.
Right.
Julius Jones, don't look for him to get much production out of the ground
Right.
game at a New York Giants defense that's pretty much going to shut him down.
Yeah, Julius Jones, 3rd in the league right now in average yards per game, but that came against some pretty soft defenses. Unless you're in a spot where you absolutely have to start him, I'd reserve him. Talk a little bit about the Giants side of things. You see, they're not going to have Plaxico Burress here in this game. Who's going to be the main playmaker for their O?
It's tough to say. You would think that you would see Kevin Boss get a little bit more action. He's been pretty much invisible this year. Amani Toomer and Steve Smith would be the 2 receivers that I think would step it up. There's been some talk about Hicks coming out, the other receiver.
Right.
But I would look for Steve Smith to probably have a bit of a better game, moving over into the slot receiver position and rolling with Eli Manning.
I'm still waiting for the breakout game from the Kraken. Brandon Jacobs yet to really have that trademark, 120-yard, 2-touchdown performance. I think this might be the week that he gets that sort of a thing going. As Jeff says, got his thing on. So Jacobs owners, get him into your lineup, and hopefully he will reward you with some touchdowns and some production. So we're going to take a brief break here in a moment. We're going to have Zach on for the next set of matchups. Yeasty will be back a little bit later in the show to break down more of the trade situation as fantasy owners continue to move forward in the season. It's all about the trade right now. Well-timed trade, Yeast, can make all the difference.
That's true. Look for the buy low situations, and we'll talk about it here in just a little bit.
Exactly. Testosterone coming back right after this.